As you can see, it is a typical winter morning here in the Pacific Northwest. Drizzling right now. So this is my first walk talk in the rain. I'm trying to stay with the commitment, not letting the weather stop me. So again, if you're new to this walk talk, this is my third time doing this. Third time at least on camera. Walk talk, this is my new habit I'm trying to do. I'm trying to take a daily walk in the morning. It's about a 45-minute walk. I got this path around the neighborhood and through the woods. And something I've been trying to do here with in sync with my business partner, Mike Lorraine, who we both kind of agreed, let's do this thing. Let's both make this a habit. Let's do this for our health and for our longevity. And for me, I want to try to shed a few pounds, just to improve some of those health numbers that the doctor always tells you. Well, you really need to lose some weight, get some of these triglyceride numbers down. You could really use some everyday cardio. So here we go. This is my attempt to do it. So I figured by doing so, if I had a little video YouTube thing as part of the process to keep me on track and not slack, well, this would be a way I could do it. So I'm doing it through all types of weather. So appreciate you going on this journey with me. So today, what to talk about on this walk talk. Anthony D in the super chat says, I think it just disappeared on me. They get your messages. Yeah, I did see them. Just took a look at them. Sounds like your FL Studio setup, which is awesome. I have to confess, I haven't used FL Studio in a while because I've been using mostly Pro Tools. So my FL Studio familiarity is a little bit rusty. So you might want to start by, like I always do, whenever I get stuck on something, and this is for all of you guys out there, anytime you run into any kind of issue, chances are somebody's made a YouTube video about it. Whether that's replacing a toilet, replacing a garbage disposal in your sink, to Pro Tools problems, computer problems, video questions, and FL Studio. There's a plethora of YouTube videos out there. I would suggest anytime you run into something like this where you're trying to just get a start on something, it's such a multifaceted program. You're going to need a lot of tutorials, more than I can offer in a short amount of time. So what I always say, it's just good to try to start with that, get the introduction, so you at least kind of know how it works. Play with it with a few things, search a few more videos, and then if you get really stuck and there's like a specific thing that you're trying to do, and that's where I can answer a specific question. Like, yeah, I'm trying to do a thing where I'm trying to record a track on this and can't get this thing to work. You know what I'm doing wrong? And if you can't figure it out, checking that stuff out, then that might be something worth looking at. Bryce Young to the Seahawks. I hadn't heard that story yet. Should brought some water. I got, excuse me. I had this little throat tickle as of last night. I went, I hope this isn't one of those things. Otherwise, I think I feel pretty good. I just had a breakfast a little bit ago. Actually, I probably drank some water right before I left. I didn't drink enough water. Got sidetracked with some stuff. I need to get more water before I start this walk, but oh well. I'll have to look into that. Haven't had a chance to study it. I was, let's see. So I mentioned a little bit about my dad's situation. It's not much more to report. I did speak to him last night, and he's doing about the same status, no real change there. Still undetermined when he will be leaving the hospital, as he's still in that situation where he's fine without oxygen laying down, but when he has to get up and do something, the oxygen level still drops. So until we get to past that point, it's going to be, he's still going to be there for at least a little while longer. My goal and my hope is that he can get out before the Super Bowl. which is a week from Sunday. So we'll see if that happens. But we can't really rush it. It's just a matter of him, his body getting better to where there's enough reduced inflammation where the air can get through. Let's see. The challenge of trying to read the chat is that it disappears after a few seconds. Buddy Graff says, and by the way, if you guys are watching, let me know where you're watching from. So we got Buddy Graff in here, your boy Michael, Triple X, Anthony D. Thoughts on trading cutting Bobby because it saves $16 million in the cap. I'll talk about that in a second. I make music. That was a Bryce Young question. I need to look a little more into that. Buddy Graff was doing some math yesterday. Seahawks have 50 mil in free space if we cut Bobby. We get back 50 mil if we pay cut Jamal Adams. Let's see if 50 mil back. See who gets 53. If we pay cut Russ 20 mil if he agrees. That's a lot of pay cuts you're asking for. Trail's a little muddy today since it's been raining most of the night. And Gucci Young Dreams is in here. All right, you go look at the trail here. This is where I'm headed. This is the start of the trailhead. The Woodside trailhead. As you can see, there's a lot more puddles and stuff. So I'm wearing my hiking boots today instead of my Merrells, which aren't so waterproof. These are pretty solid. Got my rain pants on, so I won't get wet. Got my jacket and my little NorbCam beanie should be good to go for the next 35 or however long it takes me to walk this thing. So about the clearing of the throat, just had this little tickler in my throat since last night. It's like, it won't go away. It's just hanging in there. Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, your equations for cutting things. So I think Bobby Wagner is the biggest concern in terms of right now. I don't see how they can keep him with his salary the way it is right now. It's just too much. And yet you don't want to lose a player like him. I still think he's got more than enough value. Is the possibility of him adjusting his contract? Would he be willing to take a pay cut somehow to stay longer? I mean, that would be ideal. But turn it around and put yourself in Bobby Wagner's position, right? I mean, he's worked all these years, he's never really broke the bank for what he's done for Seattle. And now in this final year when he's getting ready to get paid, sit him down and ask him, hey, Bobby, we know we set up this contract and had a lot to have you get paid this year, but we're thinking that, how about you don't? How about you just not get paid as much? Does that sound good to you? Would you do that? Would you be asked, if somebody asked you at your job to say, hey, you've been doing a lot for this company and appreciate all the hard work you've done, but we'd like to, we got some challenges here at the company, so how about you just take a 30% pay cut? How about that? That work for you? I know it's hard to compare, $1 million, millionaire sports guys to us everyday Joes, but in the end, you're still making a certain amount you thought you were going to make, and then to be asked to not take that, you really going to do it? When you put yourself in their shoes, I think we all would be like, what? No, man, a deal's a deal. This is what we agreed upon. I certainly don't like the idea of being told, hey, here's what we agreed on. And, oh, by the way, I'd like to change it now in my benefit, where you get nothing out of it. A lot to ask. And I don't know if that's fair. It really just comes down to, what does Bobby Wagner want? Does he feel like if he knows that if he doesn't do anything with his contract, he's going to leave and then go somewhere else? Will he find a better deal somewhere else? Does he have that kind of market value? Or is he willing to stay and go, well, you know what? I am doing just fine. I don't need that whole thing. I would rather stay for another year, or maybe make it 2 years and spread out and we readjust things. to give me a little bit longer time here. You know, it's all negotiable. So just like what I was saying earlier, if the shoe's on the other foot, we could always say, I quit. I'm going to go to get another job somewhere else. But maybe you really like your coworkers. Maybe you like your job. And maybe it's worth it to you to adjust a little bit for some other kind of incentive. Maybe you do one of those performance things where, all right, maybe less guaranteed, but if you hit these benchmarks, you'll have some kind of bonus that kicks in. I don't know, roster bonuses, performance incentives, number of tackles, making the Pro Bowl, that kind of thing. So we'll see. I hope he stays though. But it's gonna be tough to work around that big chunk, a big thing about big of money. That's the thing when it comes down to this whole salary cap thing, which I know the salary cap is a mysterious thing. How the Los Angeles Rams are able to sign all these guys and have all these stars and still have a salary cap intact. It's amazing to me. But I think anytime you kind of kick things down the curb, at some point it's gonna catch up to you, and you're gonna go, well, here's the end of the line. And I think that's what's the case with Bobby's, because he had a big hit at the end. So if you don't do the cap now, you can hit it later. So that's the trade-off there. Let's see what else we got. On a non-Seahawks note, what do you think about the Commander's new name? Oh yeah, I was going to talk about that too. A lot of different people in here. Hard to catch up with all the stuff. Do I live downtown or the outskirts? I do not live in, this is definitely not downtown Seattle. I live in the suburbs, technically bordering on the Renton, Kent area, Washington. And my neighborhood just happens to be tucked away in an area where you got the neighborhood, but the woods are just outside here. So that's why you have trails like this, just a few blocks from my house. So it's pretty cool. I ran into a few people here yesterday. One of them who recognized me from the videos I do for Future Sun Energy, which is, turns out he lived in the neighborhood too. I was surprised he recognized me. Dang, my knees are like a little tweaky. I noticed how yesterday, my left knees have been a little bit, and I guess this kind of goes to the whole, talking about some of the life challenges thing. My left knee is just like when I bend it a certain way, it's got a little twinge in it. Hate the twinge. So, got to keep an eye on that. But I'm getting old. Things don't stay as intact as they should. Even though I didn't really do anything to it, it's just like, just a little bit. Obviously good enough to walk, good enough to go on this hike, but certain positions, it does kind of hurt a little bit. Playing through injury. All right. Yeah, it's been a challenging week. I think combination between stuff going on with my dad, a little bit of, anytime that we have a production like we did the other day, there's a little bit of stress involved, because just trying to prepare, make sure everything's ready. I have to be mentally ready since I'm an on-camera guy. I gotta be sharp and focused, and it's not like other jobs where sometimes I can just sort of just be a tool and do my thing, but I gotta be on camera. There's a certain, you gotta have your energy, you gotta look fresh, you gotta be focused, because you're interacting with the clients and the other staff and trying to make a show out of it. So there's a certain amount of preparation. So that's been part of the week. And the usual stuff. Stresses about the future. There's always money stresses when you're an adult at this age. I don't think you ever stop worrying about money. At my age, I gotta be thinking about the bigger things, or, future college for the girls. What are they gonna do? Where are they gonna go? How much is it gonna cost? What are they gonna study? What do they need right now to make sure that their resumes are looking as good as possible and not feel like, oh, doggone it, we should have done this a few years ago. So trying to do all that and keep those things on a checklist. And of course, thinking about the longer term future, which isn't that far away, scarily. That someday retiring type of thing. It's still weird to think. It's weird to think. For me, my dad, who worked at Boeing almost his entire life, he actually started off at Boeing when he moved here from the Philippines. And then he worked here for a few years, and then he actually switched companies to another engineering company called Leckenby. And then he came back to Boeing, and then consequently worked in their space and defense division. So my dad worked on a lot of top secret projects, military weapons, and things like that, eventually finishing where he worked on the F-22 stealth fighter jet. I believe he worked on the wing portion of it, was his involvement before he retired. So when he retired, that was in 1995. My dad retired basically at the age of 55. He took an early retirement because at the time Boeing was trying to cut their workforce down. And when they do that in ways to try not to have to lay off people, they'll often, try to encourage the older people to retire and leave the force, and that will save them some money. So at that time, they were offering these golden handshakes to engineers like my dad. This, by the way, this street right here, this leads up to where my kids went to preschool. Rainier Christian School was where they went to preschool for a number of years, and a little history on that. This used to be a nuclear missile site. Yes, they actually had at the top of this hill, they had nuclear missiles, had silos where missiles could be launched from back in the days of the Cold War. That's been long since decommissioned years ago, decades ago. But it's kind of interesting. You can actually walk around and see the big concrete footprint areas where these things were housed. So it's funny to think at some point some kind of doomsday missiles were sitting parked in there ready to launch at any time. Now it's a preschool. But going back to my dad, so he retired at 55, and as you guys all know, I'm 52. So that means 3 years from now would be the time my dad was about to hang it up and not work anymore, which is amazing because I can't even fathom the idea of not working in 3 years, to be able to afford not to work. It would be awesome, but that's just not in the cards right now, and that's okay. I enjoy my work. I don't feel like I'm even at a point where I want to retire. I feel like I got way more stuff to do, and I enjoy what I do, and as long as I don't become obsolete to the point nobody wants to hire me to do anything, then I'll keep doing it. So, but the reality is, as time goes by, we get older, and the older people like me get, the more younger people coming into the world, joining the workforce. So what does that mean for me? How much more longer will I be able to do this? And of course, there's the stuff doing this on YouTube. I always wonder, how long is this going to be a thing? Will YouTube be around forever? I'm sure at some point it will change or become something else, but right now it feels like it's just nothing would, YouTube would never go away. But as we've seen in the past, almost everything eventually changes or goes away, or something happens where things evolve. Will this evolve too? We'll find out in time. But that's why it's fun to do this. Just like, for me, this is almost for you a chance to just discuss current events and different things that are going on in the world that maybe you're only relevant for a flash of an instant. We might be talking about things that are only interesting for a day, and then people forget all about it in this world we live in now, where attention span and news and everything changes by the second. But for me, it's a way to look back at a flashpoint in my life and go, what was going on in February 3rd? What was happening on that time? So that's as much for myself as for you guys as well. So those are the things that have been on my mind. Hard not to worry about those things, but at the same time, it's like you think about it, you try not to worry, even though it's hard not to, but also try to count the blessings that we have, because anytime I find myself worrying, I think, well, you know what? I could have a lot more worse things to worry about right now. So be grateful that this is the only issue that is under concern. So that's why I always try to remind myself and remind others, it can always be worse. So be happy when it's not as bad as you think it could be. All right, this is the fork in the road. This is the sign, and they're showing the sign. So I go on the power line trail, and that brings me back to the space where the power lines are out in the open area up here. So, the Washington Commanders. Yeah, I kind of mentioned it a little bit yesterday. It's a weird sounding name. It sounds very XFL-ish, USFL, anytime a new team comes in, and just like the Kraken, right? I remember a lot of people making jokes about the Kraken when it first came out, but in time, it's like slowly people just get used to it. They embrace it. I remember the controversy about the iPad. Remember when the iPad came out? Oh, there were so many jokes about that, as you can imagine, as it pertains to a comparison of the name to women's feminine hygiene products, the iPad. But now it's like no one thinks about it. No one laughs or snickers anymore when you mention, hey, I need to get a new iPad. Can I borrow your iPad? No one snickers anymore. It's just part of life. It's just what it is. So right now it's like, Washington Commanders, what the hell? What a stupid name. Now there could have been a better name. I remember some of the names that were kicked around, Washington Generals. I think that would have been kind of cool. Washington Red Wolves, I think was kicked around at one point. But, Commanders is it. Whether you like it or not, it sounds like that's going to be it for a while until they decide to change it again, decades from now, or whatever NFL looks like, decades from now. And there'll be new teams with new names, I'm sure, at some point down the line. And they'll laugh at those too and think how silly they were. But again, if you think about, if some of the names that are staples now came out right now, you'd laugh and think how stupid of a name that is. The Packers. What are you packing? The Steelers, the Browns. Let me think here. Pretty much you can't go wrong with any of the animals, right? If you go with animals, you're never going to offend anybody, because they're not going to form a rights group and protest the use of their name. So any birds, cats are always a popular one. You got your panthers, your Bengals, your lions. You got what other cats we got? Is that it? I feel like I'm missing a cat. Jaguars. There's probably more that I'm forgetting, but you got your birds. You got your Seahawks, your Cardinals, your Falcons, your Eagles. Can't go wrong with those unless you go with the parakeets or something. Then it's kind of messed up. I remember even like in basketball when they changed to the Pelicans from the Hornets. I understand the symbolism and location relevance, but Pelicans? But now we're just kind of used to it. It's funny when you look back at some of the teams and how they've moved, and you just kind of take for granted why they were named that, but they actually have a name that much more appropriate to where they came from. For example, we've all known the Utah Jazz is the Utah Jazz, right? But we all know where they came from, right? They were the New Orleans Jazz. Totally makes sense, right? Because New Orleans Jazz, synonymous with each other. The Los Angeles Lakers, they weren't always in LA. They came from the state of Michigan, where they have what? The Great Lakes. That's why they were the Lakers. So some names, you don't even think about why they are what they are. And then when you look back and trace their origin, you go, oh, well, that totally makes sense now. I see where that was coming from. Now it goes like, well, what does Utah and Jazz have anything to do with each other? Really nothing. But we just accepted it, just like Green Bay Packers and things like that. So, so I think at some point we'll just get used to the Commanders. It'll just be something that will probably take 2 or 3 years to really soak in. And they'll just be part of the lexicon of the NFL. Just like the iPad, just like the Jaguars and the Titans were at first kind of weird because the Houston Oilers moved, became the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, what's that? That sounds weird. No, it's just normal. So what is the most recent franchise? Is it the Jaguars or the Titans? I can't remember which one came most recently. It's one of those two, I think. right? Anybody know? Anybody know which of those teams was most recent? Andra, formerly known as, the artist formerly known as Andrew Andy, is now Andra. It's almost like Android. We got Payo time. Congratulations to you, your team making it, of course, to Super Bowl. I'm not rooting for you by any stretch of the word, but good for you, man. Chris Kreider says, so many fans want Hogs, Red Hog. Yeah, that's true because of the fans. But at the same time, if you didn't know the connection, you'd be going, what? You didn't name your team after pigs? What the heck? So here we are. It's always my favorite spot here. When we get to the power lines and the big structures that support them. So I talked about yesterday, look like big two-legged creatures standing ready to bust out and come to life, Transformer style. Phone is pretty wet. Hopefully I'm not messing it up. I think you guys can still see the camera's not affected really. Oh, now I smeared it up. Let's see if I can. Should have not messed with it. There we go. Ain't broke, don't fix it. All right, what was I supposed to talk about? Oh, the lawsuit thing. So, in recent news, Brian Flores, the fired coach of the Miami Dolphins, filed a lawsuit against the NFL about biased hiring practices. And maybe on a larger scale, he and the former coach of the Browns talked about how they were actually, the suit says, he was offered $100,000 per game to lose those games. Obviously for the sake of getting a higher draft pick in the following season. Now, we all know that we've talked about this, how players don't try to tank games. It's bad for the integrity of the game if a team actually goes out there. Like in that game with the Raiders and the Chargers at the end of the regular season. Remember everybody was talking about how, hey, maybe they'll just all sit on the ball, take a knee all game, and then both teams can be in the playoffs. Obviously that didn't happen. It was actually a pretty good game. So no worries there. That conspiracy theory was killed on the moment. But now we're seeing this lawsuit, which was dismissed by the NFL. That Brian Flores claims the owner offered him $100,000 per game to lose so they could draft higher in the following draft pick in 2019. So if this turns out to be true, this is a bad situation. Because one, if it's proven true, one, what do you do about it? You fire the owner. He's got to sell the team, and there's got to be some major penalties there. But that I don't even think you can just slap the wrist and move on, because that's a sign that this owner, if he did it once, who knows what he's capable of doing again. But is this once in a blue moon scenario, or is this done more often? We just don't know about it. Now, as it turns out, former coach of the Browns saying the same thing, that he was also incentivized to lose games back when they were trying to get higher draft picks, ended up going 0-16 at one year. Tough thing about this is who's going to speak out about this. Obviously, Flores was taking a big chance to speak out and do a lawsuit against the NFL. Last time somebody tried to sue the NFL, Colin Kaepernick, how'd that work out for him? Never got a job ever since. So now, will he have the same sort of fallout if he, with this suit going on? Or he's a good coach, which also adds to the whole thing that doesn't make a lot of sense. Is why did he get fired for actually having not a horrible tenure during his time with the Dolphins? I'll show you a little bit where I'm at. This is the site of the Chicago Bears rivals video that I shot with Mark Collins and Brian Abker. Took place right here where those big mud puddles are. Our little walk and talk was right here. And then that tree right there, that's where Mark was lounging with a bag of Cheetos, waiting for his moment to come. Enjoy walking through here. It's like I feel like I'm witnessing a walk. Flores is taking a big risk going against the big machine because he uses, and that's a big machine rolling against him. It's in the NFL's interest to make this go away, because they certainly don't want to have a rumor, conspiracy and fixed games and things like that floating around the NFL, especially now that gambling is legal. Can you imagine the fallout? It was bad enough for just be pre-gambling, when people just would be pissed that teams would actually lose on purpose and not play the game to try to win. But now that gambling is completely legal and rampant everywhere, you can imagine how gamblers would be super pissed. They knew that the team that they're betting on is probably trying to lose on purpose, but nobody knows it for sure. Top of the hill. I always feel good when I get to this point. This is like the end of the grind right here. It's all easy from this point here. Power lines above. Crackling, snapping. What's that word? Crackling, buzzing. Yeah, coming from over there, down over there. So it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. Will this be a scandal to rock the NFL world? Or will this thing be snuffed out quick and forgotten? It's another bump in the road in the chapter of questionable moments regarding the NFL. I hope I don't know. If it's true, I hope it's limited to that one or two teams only. And obviously, it's only going to affect the teams that have been losing, because the teams that are in the playoffs, clearly, they have no motivation to lose. Teams that are in the hunt. But you get those teams that are not questionable. 2 wins, 3 wins. You know, even the Seahawks, had a first-round pick to play with. Imagine this. If this year, with this terrible season we had, imagine if the draft next year was full of great quarterbacks. You know, all kinds of Joe Burrows and Andrew Lucks, and all stacked up and down the first round. And the Seattle is sitting there with their 3 wins midway through the season. And then they're going, you know, we've been pretty good in the playoffs every year. And every year we always have to pick late because we're in the playoffs. Never having a losing record. Never get to pick from that high crop. But then all of a sudden, wait, you know, we're kind of sucking this year. Guess what? We got our first round pick next year and some really good quarterbacks. Let's say we maybe don't put out our best team on the last few games. Let's just kind of continue to suck the rest of this year. Who cares? We're not going to playoffs anyway. That's the temptation. And until they change it to where the draft isn't based on your worst to first picking order, temptation, or at least that desire to see your team lose to get a better draft pick, especially if the fruits dangling are good next year. Now, unfortunately for the Seahawks, it's not the case. Not only is it a weak quarterback class, but we don't even have a first-round pick, so there's really nothing to tank for, so I'm glad they didn't. But had the circumstances been different, we might even ourselves be going, man, I hope the Seahawks lose, man. We could get blah, blah, blah. And, you know, with the 4th pick, if we just stay ahead worse than this team or that team, you know, it does. The temptation is going to definitely be luring there, knowing that you're not going anywhere in a particular season, and that the next year can suddenly get a super upgrade, you know, if you were deciding you weren't going to have Russell Wilson. That's another conversation, which we won't talk about today. So that was that. So I want to, totally non-football topic. I wanted to talk about, I've been watching, staying up with the Boba Fett series on Disney+. It's funny because the spoilers alert, if you haven't watched it yet and you're wanting to watch it and you don't want to get spoiled, just don't listen to this part. So I watched all of Mandalorian, loved it. And so watching Boba Fett, there was clearly some expectation that it's going to be as good as, or hopefully better, because Boba Fett, we know him from the original Star Wars from way back in the 80s. So to have a character like that, you know, getting to see his story after where we thought he was dead and gone, it was very intriguing. Now, I have to say, it was a little slow getting out of the gates. Didn't have that same bite of Mandalorian. My biggest complaint was Boba Fett spends way too much time with his helmet off. That's what makes him look cool. And I guess that's kind of what Mandalorian was. It's like the guy was in his helmet 99.9% of the time. So when you ever saw his face, it was like this, we're gonna see his face. But the rest of the time, he's just cool. You hear his voice. You don't know what his expression looks like. But here, Boba Fett's taking it on and off like a shower cap. I mean, it's garbage day. Oh, we're gonna watch the garbage man in action here. Here's the process. Hydraulics, pneumatics, picking up. Dumps it with a straw arm. I remember back in the old days before they had that, the garbage man would have to get out of the truck, walk out, pick up the thing, both arms in his back, throw it into the thing, put it back, and do that every time with every one of these receptacles. Man, what a back-breaking job that would have been back in the day. At least now they don't have to get out of the truck hardly, with a few occasions. They just push the button, grab it. So it's good. Good for them. Longer longevity for their health. Anyway, back to the Boba Fett. So they show him too much. I was having a hard time getting really into it. But I stayed with it because I wanted to see where it goes. But the last 2 episodes have been more interesting. You want to know why? Not because Boba Fett became more interesting. They stopped paying attention to Boba Fett and they actually switched over to Mandalorian. So the story actually starts to follow a little bit of a Mandalorian's involvement in this saga. And the best part about the show last night was that he goes to visit Grogu, little baby Yoda, as everybody calls him, even though he's not baby Yoda, he just looks like a baby Yoda. So he wants to go visit Grogu and deliver him a present, which is this Mandalorian armor, little baby size, like little bib size, it's so tiny. But he goes to visit him, and then when he goes to the planet where he's at, he's greeted by R2, another familiar face. But more importantly, we get to see Grogu being trained by young Luke Skywalker. And we saw him up here in the last episode of The Mandalorian where he saves the day, rescues Grogu, and takes him with him. And we think we'll never see him again, at least not until the next Mandalorian season. But we get a nice little peek here. And this was probably one of my favorite episodes of all because we got to see Luke training little Grogu Yoda style. But this time it's Luke teaching Yoda, essentially the other way around. But he's super cute, right? But what I was looking at, I was really interested to see was how was they going to do with the Luke young face replacement? Because if you watch the behind the scenes, they have a really cool behind the scenes documentary on Disney Plus. You can see how they did the face replacement. It's a very intricate process, combination of a body double with all these old scans of what they did is they took all these faces of Luke from all the different movies, all the photos, everything you could find on the internet, and they just made this whole library of Luke faces. And essentially, they shot the actor, they mapped his face so they could track all these face movements and mouth movements and eyes and things like that. And then they took these maps of the young Luke and basically put it on top of his face. And you can imagine the finessing of the details to make it look believable. There was some stuff in that Mandalorian episode where when he talked, it was always like, okay, pretty good, but that looked a little weird. So I always noticed that they kind of dodged around. Anytime he started talking, like they cut away to the other person so you don't have to watch his mouth too long. So that's the same thing in my business. If something's not really that great visually, the best way to solve it is just not show it. Distract them from somewhere else. Nothing to see here, folks. Look over there. So, and this one, though, they actually spent a little bit more time on it in the daylight, mind you. When they did the Mandalorian one, it was kind of inside a Star Destroyer in a spaceship, kind of darkly lit. But this was in broad daylight in the training sessions. And I must say, they did a really good job. Whatever they did on the first one, they definitely improved the process. And I thought they did a really nice job of mapping out the face on there. And I just didn't, if I didn't know going into this, if I didn't know this was a fake digital young Luke, I was just watching the show and popped on and go, oh, look, Mark Hamill, when he was 28 years old or whatever, made a movie. I probably wouldn't have known. I probably wouldn't have noticed anything about it. It looked that good. It's come a long way, you know, when they did like Grand Moff Tarkin from Rogue One. He definitely looked something between Polar Express and something real. You know, there was something video game-ish about him that didn't quite look right. But this Luke, whew, man, they did a really good job in him. So the face replication technology has really improved. And what this, what this kind of gives me, I don't know if this is good to hope for this or not, but imagine, so right now I'm anticipating, as having been a long time young kid who was blown away by the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the movie seemed to have gone more and more downhill since. But there's another one coming out, and I think it's Indiana Jones and his Lost Walker. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure if that's the correct title. But I mean, he's getting old, right? Now you could do body doubles from a distance, stuntman, so he doesn't have to fight old. But you look at him, he's just like, man, it's Grandpa Jones, right? Hard to watch. But theoretically, they could get to a point here. I think they might already be at a point where they could do a whole Indiana Jones movie, and he could look like Harrison Ford when he was in his early 30s. Maybe make him timeless forever. And then the voice of Mark Hamill, I don't know how they did it. I don't know if they're using synthesized voice of his voice, or it's just a voice double who knows how to sound like him, which there are a lot of people who are out there who can do voice impersonations. But the idea that they could maybe take a superhero or a hero of a certain genre, and he could continue playing his role with the use of digital technology, keeping him young. It's an interesting argument. Would they even need the actor anymore? Would you even need Harrison Ford if they just use his likeness and just create an entirely young digital Indiana Jones and do forever movies where he looks like he's never aging, kind of like Caillou? On that note, I gotta go. I'm gonna go see my mom, hang out with her a little bit, gotta run some errands with her as we wait for more news about my dad and his hopefully soon to be released from the hospital. Just not quite yet. One final note, can't land on a Caillou. Big thanks to Mama Blue and Seahawks Martin. The two of them, they both sent thank you cards in the mail. I just opened them yesterday, read them to my dad over the phone. He was extremely touched by it, and I called Mama Blue, and I sent Seahawks Martin and his mom a message to thank him for it. But if you guys are watching, thank you for those cards. They meant a lot. I was touched, especially. I know my dad was too. So thanks for your thoughtfulness, and thanks you to everybody else who took the time to send a message, DM, comment, whatever, to just even ask how my dad's doing. So much appreciated. I keep telling him every day that a lot of people are pulling for him. So I know it helps as he's trying to keep up the fight to get back on his feet, and hopefully back to total normal as a screaming, cheering Seahawks fan and fan of my daughters playing volleyball. That's it, guys. Off to the day. Have a great one. We'll talk to you guys probably tomorrow.